Hi everybody, in this video I'm going to be walking you through how to create the cow catcher, which is part of the model train that you're building for Introduction to Engineering Design, which is part of the Project Lead the Way curriculum. Very important to note before we begin here, whenever you create sketches in Autodesk Inventor, make sure that each sketch is fully constrained before you do anything else like extruding or filleting or whatever it is. If you fail to fully constrain sketches, that's going to lead you to huge issues later on, especially with the cow catcher. Make sure you keep your sketches simple. I would always recommend that you do things like fillets, chamfers, so on and so forth. I recommend that you do those in 3D mode after you finish sketches instead of doing it within the actual sketch itself. You're going to find that that makes it much easier to fully constrain your sketches, which leads me back to the first couple of bullet points. And the last thing is, just keep in mind as you're building these parts, there are many correct methods of creating 3D models. So what you see in this video is only going to be one way to do it. If you find a different way that creates the same exact 3D shape in the end, then fantastic. That's great. That's actually what we want. Okay, let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do, you'll notice when you look at the cow catcher that it's basically a home plate on bottom and a home plate on top. So I'm going to start by creating the home plate that's on the bottom surface of the cow catcher. That's the larger of the two home plates. I used a mixture of geometric constraints plus the dimensions that you see below in order to fully constrain it. One thing that might be worth noting, I went through and I used the equal constraint to say that these two diagonals here were equal in length, and that really helped me out. Once you see that that is fully constrained, you're ready to go to the next step, which is to create an offset work plane. The offset work plane, the amount of offset needs to be equal to the vertical height of the cow catcher, because what's going to happen is we're going to draw a new sketch, like you see on the right picture. We're going to draw a new sketch on that offset work plane in just a second, and we're going to use it to draw the top surface, the smaller home plate on the cow catcher. Once you have that new sketch created, then the idea is to make sure that they actually align with each other. So I can still see the home plate in the background, the bigger one. I'm drawing the smaller home plate on this sketch, and I'm going to add a coincident constraint that I've circled it in red for you. The midpoints of those two lines at the top need to have a coincident constraint so they align with each other. If you do that, then that should really help with aligning everything else. Make sure everything is dimensioned correctly. You should have a sketch that looks like mine, and everything should be fully constrained when you're done. This is very, very important for them to be constrained to each other and fully constrained. If they are not vertically aligned, then we will have issues in the next few steps. After you do this, then it's a simple Loft command. You click on Loft, you click on the bottom home plate, you click on the top home plate, and it creates this surface that you see here. You're halfway there. When you get done with the Loft command, you're going to shell out the bottom surface using the dimension sheet to figure out how thick that shell needs to be. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a sketch on that front trapezoidal shape like you see in the left picture here. Now, if you're not able to do that, you need to go back and make sure that your bottom and top home plates align with each other. If you're having any issues with not being able to create a sketch on this trapezoidal shape, it's because of the alignment of your home plate shapes earlier in the video. Once you have the sketch on the trapezoidal shape here, then you're going to use project geometry to give yourself this trapezoid shape in green to actually be able to use. Then you use the offset feature to draw it inward, and you'll need to get the dimensions and how thick that offset is from your dimension sheet. That will create the smaller trapezoid outline. Once you have that in place, then you're able to go and do an extrude cut, and you have that inset about halfway into the shelled feature. The next step here, for me, would be to create a mid-plane between two planes. And what I do is I create a work plane. I choose the drop-down option that says mid-plane between two planes, and I'm going to choose this diagonal feature over here and its counterpart on the opposite side, and that creates a work plane right down the middle of my cow catcher. After I do that, I'm able to mirror this extrude cut over to the other side using this work plane as my mirror plane. The last step is to go through and actually place the pegs on the back. So I'm going to draw some circles. I use the equal constraint in this case to make sure that the circles are all the same size, and that made it really simple because then I only had to dimension the size of this one circle here for diameter. The rest of these dimensions here are simply placement. How far over, up, down, left, right are they? Once you have those fully constrained size-wise and position-wise, then you can go forward and you can extrude. By the way, in this step, you'll see that I made that work plane that cut down the middle of the cow catcher invisible. That's really simple. Just right-click on it and uncheck visibility. Once you have these pegs extruded, then the last step is to simply go through and chamfer the ends. When you have that done, pat yourself on the back. That cow catcher is one of the more difficult pieces of this train. Congratulations.